Hello, here's another episode of this production log. I'm going to change the format a little bit. I'm going to separate the workflow deep dives from the production log because the videos were getting too long and they were getting too tedious to make for me, and I think too tedious to watch for you. So from now, I'm going to separate the workflow deep dives into a different series. So this production log will just be about the current state of this project as it is now. The last assets that I was working on were all these wires and hoses, and I devised a few methods for making them nice and messy and random, and that's what the workflow deep dive is about. So if you're interested, have a look at that. As for the project, I think this cockpit is pretty close to finished, so I'm going to leave it for now. And I'll just switch over. This is one of the shots in the film, so I've blocked out the camera movement for all the shots and the movement of the characters. And it's pretty nice to actually see how the shot will look with the environment. And keep in mind, there's no lighting here. It's just very simple lights. Now, I've had a few challenges along the way. The first thing is that with a scene of this complexity, it's very important to be organized, especially with all the objects that are instances and references of each other and that have modifiers that are shared across objects and materials and so on. But I'm designing as I go. And it's very hard to reconcile designing as you go with staying organized. And that's been a huge challenge for me, and it's resulted in a lot of time wasted and having to redo things and so on. Another challenge is that I'm used to working on single assets. Like in work, I make weapons and vehicles, whereas here I'm making an environment composed of multiple assets, and they all have to work cohesively together. And it's pretty tough. And so that's something I'm finding quite challenging. Another thing is I'm just working on this in my spare time in the evenings and a little bit on the weekends. And it's quite hard with all the stopping and starting. And sometimes I have to reorient myself in the scene when I haven't worked on it for a few days. And especially if I've been doing tedious work in my day job, like UVs or baking or something, it's quite hard to just sit down at this for another 3 hours afterwards and focus. And I've been having a few difficulties with in Max in the scene, especially using UV Packmaster with multiple objects and like with a shell modifier that tends to cause problems and so on. So yeah, I've had quite a few frustrating days with this project recently. But with that said, I was never under the illusion that this project would be easy. I knew there would be very, very challenging days. And I knew there would be days where I frankly just didn't enjoy working on it. That's just part of a project like this. You know it's going to happen and you just have to get through those days and keep going. But I'm pretty happy with how this environment has turned out so far. So the next thing to do is if I'll just go down this tunnel, and here's a second environment. It's the second segment in this spacecraft. So this will be what I'll tackle next. It's kind of a storage/utility area. So there'll be large containers on the side over there, some smaller lockers. There's the hatch and the tunnel we just came out of. So there's 2 cryogenic storage tanks. And on the bottom of this segment, there's a hatch. And in the hatch, there is an airlock. But I'm not going to do that airlock just yet. So I'm going to focus just on this area here. And I'll leave this update there, and I'll see you guys in the next one.